My dear community, welcome to my channel. My name is Wei-Jen and I'm a personal transformation coach. I help people to expand their awareness, self-love, and elevate their energy vibration to attract a lifestyle and love they desire to have. Today's topic I want to dive in is why codependency is so hard to break. Think about that for a moment. What is codependency? Well, according to a dictionary, I have a little note. Codependency is a psychological condition or a relationship in which a person manifesting low self-esteem and a strong desire for approval has an unhealthy attachment to another, often controlling or manipulative person, such as a person with an addiction to drugs or alcohol. Now, to shorten this paragraph, right? It almost sounds like dependence on the needs of or on control by another. Now, why do I want to dive into this subject? Is because I felt a lot of time we don't really pay attention of our behaviors and our patterns, and that could be pretty codependent, you know? Some of you have probably already seen my previous video. I am a recovered codependent, and I grew up in a very dysfunctional childhood. My mother is a untreated codependent. She's still today. My father is a functional alcoholic. So you wouldn't be surprised why both of them, could stay in this relationship, for a very long time. At least they waited until I became adult and then they finally got divorced. But it was a perfect role model for me to absorb and to learn, to mimic, to model them when I was very little because they raised me. And it was a perfect example of codependent relationship to both my parents. And so I thought, maybe understand how did this develop so I could heal myself. I can break that unhealthy, vicious cycle and the patterns. So number one, I want to say is that codependency oftentimes is built from our childhood. And that, there is a golden period age between age probably 6 or 7 to age probably 12 or 13. Whoever raised us, in my case, it will be my parents. In some people, their case will be they have a surrogate who raised them. And so we mimic and we model, we copy the way they behave, the way they think, feel, and then the way they created the experience. And that's how, in my case, I pick up a lot of very codependent behaviors, such as, I will constantly chase people who didn't even want to be with me or not interested in me, or I used to constantly try to control or manipulate, people or a situation the way that I wanted to be. And that's not really healthy, to be honest. And that is something that I learned from my mother, because my dad was a very emotional, unavailable, and then my mother constantly chased him, wanted to get his approval, affection, love, and validation, so on and so forth. So I learned that, and until a couple years ago, I had a couple hard bottoms that I hit, and I finally made a really conscious decision that I was gonna make a change. And this codependency must stop here right now with me, not with anybody, So I started to really work on myself consciously on this part. So that's how we developed codependency. Now, the next thing that I would say is that from what I learned in the last couple years, if you think of codependency as a disease, it is an invisible disease, okay? And it's like alcoholic, right? They needed to have that glass of wine or a beer to go through their day, to survive, right? so they can feel, their breathing, their exist. And this is also very similar to codependency as well. It may not be genetic, but definitely from what I observed and then also my experience, it is definitely most of the time, it's coming from generation to generation. So I needed to have other people's approval, love, affection, so on and so forth. So I could feel better about me. I could feel that I was breathing. I could feel I was existed. I could, go through my day, right? So it is something that I depend on somebody or something outside of me to go through my day, to feel that I could survive. So that's another thing. If you think of, codependency is a disease, just like alcoholic or a drug addict, it's there is a very similar concept here. Now, the next thing is that codependent, like people who have a very unhealthy and significant codependent symptom, oftentimes they crave for love, affection, validation, approval from outside people, from outside resource or activity. Could be. It doesn't have to be a person. In order to feel that they have some level of self-worth, right? And then that's why oftentimes I'm talking about myself, my experience. I used to attract people who were either alcoholic or narcissist because they're so within in their frame. And I was this, people pleaser, caretaker, that I wanted to make sure that they are happy, that I wanted to make sure they like me, that I am likable, I am lovable, and I am worthy based on the approval, the attention they gave me, right? So that is also not very healthy because most of the time I ended up that I was being taken advantage by unhealthy people. And then also inevitably, the relationship was also very toxicated. Now, last but not least, circling back what I said earlier, that, codependency is something that is so autopilot. You or I have to pay extra awareness to notice my pattern. And especially when they don't serve me anymore. There are some patterns or behaviors that they used to serve me quite a lot. As a child, I had to swallow my feelings and ignore my desire and my needs so I could make a peace in this household between my parents, right? Because my parents, both of them, they had their own issue. And as a child, all I wanted was the love from both my parents. All I wanted was a happy environment in the household so I could feel safe, right? However, when I become adult, I use the same strategy into my adulthood life, and I found it didn't work to me anymore. And in fact, if I try to use the same old strategy into my adulthood life, I ended up, I suffered, and I suffered a lot, physically, emotionally, mentally, and of course, spiritually. So I had to develop a new healthy pattern to replace this old unhealthy pattern that doesn't serve me anymore. So I had to really consciously learning how to communicate and how to express my feelings, needs, and desire to myself and to another human being as well in a kind way. And so I could feel that there's a sense of self-love and a self-worth because I speak the truth with a kindness and I stand up for myself. And that's also an exercise to practice, slowly being independent emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. Right? So I hope, through the couple shares that I shared with you here today, you will understand a bit better about why codependency is so hard to break. Because oftentimes we're just so busy. I'm very busy with, with things, little things, big things, and with people in my life. And if it wasn't the bottoms that I hit, a couple years ago, I probably would still, think that everything that I was doing as a child and into my adulthood is perfectly normal, is perfectly, healthy and serving me in a very toxic way. And so I hope you find some insights and different new perspective from my sharing. And if you wonder how I can cure, my codependency, if you're currently struggling, your relationship with other people, or you don't find your old patterns or behaviors that serve you anymore, I would invite you to go outside to find some resource. There are books, by the way. There are books I highly recommend. Codependent No More by Melody Beatty or Betty. Yes. So this is the book that I really highly recommend, and hopefully you will get some more insights and learn some of the ways to manage and to cure codependency. That is all I want to share today. If you find my video, my sharing is very insightful for you, feel free to leave a like or leave a comment, or even share with your friends and family, because you never know, what they're going through, and maybe this video can be a medicine to people who is currently struggle with codependency. Now, if you really want to dive into a deeper personal transformation, feel free to book a 30-minute discovery call with me to find out whether or not working with me is a right fit to you. I'm always here to help you, and I always want to serve. I always want to contribute. So you know where to find me. I post the link below this video. And again, thank you, and thank you so much for spending your time watching my video. I am so grateful for your support, and I wish you have a fabulous day.